Growth demands change whether you're ready for it or not. See, life has a funny way of reminding you that nothing stays the same. The moment you think you've figured it all out is the exact moment you're confronted with a new challenge or a new demand for growth. And it doesn't just apply to your business, your life, it applies to who you are as a person. And growth isn't optional. It's a necessity if you want to find ways to continue moving forward. You might think the routine, the role, the identity you built is a solid one. And for a while, it probably was or is. But there will come a time when what worked for you last year, last month, even last week won't work anymore. And it's your ability to recognize that and adapt to it that will determine how far you go. You have to evolve. Let's get into what that really means, why it matters, and how you can apply it to your life today. Let's start with the danger of repetition. We are creatures of habit. We like predictability, we like structure, we like the security of knowing what comes next. It feels safe, like you've got things under control. But that sense of control is often the very thing that blinds you to the changes happening around your environment. The danger of repetition is that it creates a false sense of stability. You keep doing what worked in the past, not because it's effective anymore, but because it's comfortable. It became comfortable. It's familiar. You develop an emotional attachment to those routines. You feel like that you need to keep busy. You might develop an emotional attachment to those identities and even the achievements that have helped define you up until that point. The problem, comfort kills growth. Let me give you a real life example. So, Painkiller has been focused on building events the last couple of years. While we've been successful in creating experiences, the business, in full transparency, has been slower in growth when we first started. I think it's because we fell into a rhythm of these are our events, let's just improve on our events, we don't need to expand. But in the last 12 months, we came to a realization that if we want to bring Painkiller to a new level, for ourselves, for what we believe it can be, we need to begin thinking differently. We'd fallen into this thought of, why change what's working? And that's a dangerous pattern. The result of believing we don't need to change what's working is stagnation, and eventually irrelevance. If we stayed the same, we would be repeating the same processes, the same tactics, and we would probably be thinking we're safe. But we would actually be slowly fading away as a brand in relevancy. The market continues to move and will always continue to move without us. Now, let's shift to a personal level. What if you are the company? What if the identity, the routine, or the role that you've relied on no longer works? It's easy to fall into the trap of thinking, well, this is who I am, this is what I do. But what if you don't evolve beyond that? You stay stuck and the world moves on without you. Look, before you start thinking I'm saying repetition is the enemy, let's be clear. Repetition can also be a powerful tool. It's how you build mastery. Repetition, when done right, sharpens your skills, reinforces your discipline, and brings you to a level of expertise needed to succeed in whatever it is you're trying to accomplish. But repetition without intention leads to stagnation. It's repetition with intention that leads to mastery. And you don't become a master by doing something once. You become a master by showing up every single day, refining your approach, learning from your mistakes, and pushing the boundaries of what you find comfortable. So let's talk about this in terms of personal development now. Whether it's fitness, mental toughness, or grit, or even business skills, the process of getting better requires constant repetition. And it's not about mindless repetition, it's deliberate. It's deliberate practice. You have to repeat actions with a clear intent of getting better. For example, when you first begin training, this can be strength conditioning, but for the sake of this conversation, let's talk about lifting weights because it's probably the most common. The movements are awkward when you first get into a gym. Your form isn't perfect, but over time, by repeating those movements with the goal of improving technique, getting better, I'm talking about intentionally going in and trying to learn to be better, fixing things, the movements begin to feel more natural. Each time you hit the gym, It's not about just going through the motions. It's about actively fine-tuning. And with that type of repetition, that's where you make progress. But repetition can also be a trap. If you stay too comfortable, if you keep repeating the same movements, the same workouts, without increasing intensity or resistance or weight, you find a plateau. You hit a ceiling. Your body needs new challenges to grow, just like your mind. So how do you balance it? How do you use repetition to build without letting it hold you back? So I want to introduce you to framework 1, the comfort versus challenge zone. So this is about taking some time and regularly assessing where you are. Are you operating in your comfort zone where things feel easy? Are they repetitive? Do they feel predictable? Or are you operating in a challenge zone where things feel a little uncomfortable? Sometimes you're not too certain, but you're seeing a bit of progress. The key is balance. Too much comfort, you stop growing. Too much challenge, you could risk burning out. Question might be the sweet spot. And that's where discomfort meets progress. And that's different for everybody. That's where repetition becomes a tool for growth, not stagnation. Every time you hit the challenge zone, you're pushing your limits, expanding your capacity, redefining what you can actually do. And that's where evolution happens. How do you know when it's time to move on? It's easy to get comfortable and stop questioning whether the things you're doing still serve you. But here's a truth I think we all need to acknowledge. Growth demands that you leave certain things behind, whether it's a habit, a role, or even a version of yourself that you identify with. You can't cling to the past and expect to evolve into your future. So how do you know when it's time? You have to be brutally honest with yourself. And I call that the mirror test, which I can get into in a whole nother video, but a signal that may tell you it's time to move on is you're no longer being challenged. And that's simple. If everything feels easy and again, predictable, or maybe it feels like something mundane, you've stopped growing. Growth happens when you're pushed outside of your comfort zone, where there's friction. If you're not feeling that friction, chances are you're not evolving, which brings me to framework 2, the identity expansion model. This model is about recognizing when you need to shed an old identity to step into a new one. As humans, we get attached to who we are. We build these stories around ourselves that may be positive and also negative. And some positive ones might be like, I'm a hard worker, or I'm the person who always figures it out. Negative might be, I'm not that type of person, or I've never been good at that. But at some point, or maybe even from the very beginning, those identities become limiting. Remember, your identity is fluid, not fixed. It should evolve with each new phase of your life. You aren't supposed to stay the same person forever. You're meant to grow, to expand, and to take on new roles, new challenges, as well as new levels of understanding. Think about your own life right now. Are you clinging to an old identity that's no longer serving you? Have you become too attached to being one thing? Is it holding you back from becoming more? That's the question you need to ask yourself. Now, this is about the evolution of yourself and why personal growth requires letting go. And this part it's hard. It's personal. Letting go of who you used to be or what used to work for you feels like stepping into the unknown. Now, I understand that, but that's when the shift happens. Personal growth requires letting go. I've had to do this in my own life, and I'll probably have to continue it throughout all of my life, but I'm looking forward to it. Because whether it's stepping away from a business that once worked or evolving past an identity that no longer fits, it's always going to be uncomfortable. But with those moments of letting go, I wouldn't have evolved into the person I am today. Exploring new places, expanding the business, or even going down this route of creating content. Success can hold you back if you're not careful. Just because something worked doesn't mean that it's still working. Evolution requires that you recognize when it's time to let go of old successes, habits, and even identities. When you cling to them, you're blocking the path to something greater. Think about the times you've resisted change because of past successes. How long did you stay in your comfort zone? Well, that could be weeks, months, years, or you might not even know that you're in one. How much time do you spend repeating the same actions, hoping to capture the same result? The truth is, every version of yourself is temporary. And the moment you hold on too tightly is the moment you stop moving forward. And now I want to introduce another framework called the growth ceiling. It's the point where your current skill set, mindset, and routine can no longer push you any higher or forward. You hit a plateau, not because you aren't working hard, but because you've reached the limits of what your current approach can offer. You can't break through that ceiling by repeating the same strategies, by repeating the same movements, or responding the same way that got you here. Personally and professionally, you have to change. When you hit your growth ceiling, that's your signal that it's time to evolve. What got you here won't get you there. Now ask yourself, where is my ceiling? Where am I stuck repeating the same actions but not seeing new results? When you hit that point, it's not about working harder. It's about working smarter. And often that means letting go of your current approach entirely. So, bringing it all together, how do you balance repetition and evolution? How do you know when to stick with something and when to let it go? It comes down to self-awareness and constant evaluation. And this requires being brutally honest with yourself. I know I've said that before, but it's a hard look in the mirror. You need to regularly check in and be truthful. Are you still growing? Are your routines, your habits, your identities still pushing you forward in the way that you want? Or are they holding you back? Are they preventing you from seeing and moving and achieving the things that you want to achieve? When repetition serves you, when it's aligned with deliberate practice and growth, it's your most powerful tool. When repetition becomes comfort, when it stops challenging you, that's when it's time to evolve. And that brings me to the final framework, the Evolution Audit. Every few months, really take a look at your routines, your business strategies, and even your mindset. Ask yourself, what's working? Is this habit, strategy, or identity still pushing me forward? What's not working? Where have I hit a ceiling? Where have I hit a plateau? And what's no longer serving me? What needs to change? What do I need to do to create a space for the next version of myself or my business? By regularly checking in, auditing your life and work, you ensure that you're always growing and adapting. Evolution doesn't happen by accident. It happens by design. It's hard making room. It's uncomfortable, no doubt. Letting go of old roles, old routines, old definitions of successes feels like stepping away from who you are. And sometimes it feels like you're stepping away from yourself. So here's what I want you to take away from this. Evolution is about building on your past, not abandoning it. It's about using repetition to master your craft, but recognizing when it's time to move into new territory. Growth doesn't happen in your comfort zone. If you stay too long in what's familiar, it may feel safe, but it's a slow path to stagnation. The question is, what are you clinging to that's holding you back? What roles, routines, or identities have you outgrown? The answer to that question will tell you where your next evolution needs to happen, whether it's in your business or in your personal life. Be willing to let go. Your evolution depends on it. If this message hits home for you, hit subscribe, follow me, and let's keep growing together. Growth over fear, always.